faith and courage, aspire, build, and advance. Let us put the deadly disease of fear behind us, because life opens up the proper doors for those who approach it with courage. We ought not to be afraid of our chances at success, and we certainly cannot be afraid to dream big. Let us break all forms of small-minded thinking and aspire to things so great that our foreparents would be proud of the sacrifices that they made and the freedoms that we currently have. Let us mix the vitality and exuberance of the youth with the wisdom and the guidance of the elders. Then we can see effective action which would change our society. The best way to predict the future is to create it. With that being said, my fellow Grenadians, it is time for us to create a brighter future, ever conscious of God, with faith and courage, and as one people and one family. Let us find ourselves on the right side of history by sowing the positive seeds which our children and every generation after them can reap and benefit from. With this, I say thank you. God bless you all. God bless this movement. And God bless this beautiful nation.
Thank you, Garth. After that, we can be sure that with this caliber of young people in our country, we don't need to worry about the future of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Culture is at the heart of everything Grenadian. TGM is pleased to present this brother and sister combo, already synonymous with the expression of Grenadian music at its finest. Please welcome into your homes and hearts, Kemek and Matumda de Gale.
Well, she's seen by.
rhythm and melody of our rich culture, the Gales.
Here in Grenada, while considerable progress has been made with women's participation in Parliament and in senior management in the public sector, issues such as violence against women, declining access to quality healthcare services, and the lack of decent employment opportunities are at the forefront of the challenges we face as women today, just as we have had for many, many years. We cannot continue on this course. Our women are the backbone of our society, and therefore for our nation to prosper, we need change. That's why I congratulate the Grenada Movement, TGM, on the occasion of its launch. And I'm happy to give my endorsement to TGM as an agent for change in the way we as a nation treat with the issues that affect all our women folk.
Our next performer is a young entertainer who is recognized as one of the most versatile performing artists in the history of Grenada. Tonight, TGM is happy to have him perform the hit single Rise, accompanied by Cavell Isaac on the keyboard. Ladies and gentlemen, Jefferson Ramirez.
Broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find that fighter, but I see it in you, so we can walk it out and move mountains. We can walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. Oh yes, I'll rise up, high like the waves, I'll rise up, in spite of the ache, I'll rise up. I'm gonna do it 1,000 times again. Just for you, for you, for you, for you. When the silence isn't quiet and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise you will bring the world to its feet and move mountains, bring it to its feet and move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up, in spite of the ache, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. Oh yes, I'll rise up, high like the waves, I'll rise up, and I'll rise unafraid, I'll rise up, and I'm gonna do it 1,000 times again. Just for you, for you, for you, for you, yeah. Oh, see, all we need is hope and And for that we have each other. Yes, we do. Oh, for that we have each other. See, we will rise, we will rise, we will rise. Yeah. Oh, yes, I'll rise up. I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up. I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up. And I'll do it 1,000 times again. Oh, yes, I'll rise up. High like the waves, I'll rise up. In spite of the ache, I'll rise up. And I'm gonna do it 1,000 times again. Just for you, 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 for you. Just for you, only for you. Yeah, for you, 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 only for you, for you, only for you. Oh.
Hi, I'm Janice. And for years, it felt like we have been standing alone in the fight for what is right, just, and fair. We stood out on a limb, and sometimes it got lonely out there because we chose to stand up and speak out on behalf of our brothers and sisters and the children of the nation. When we marched for tougher laws against child sexual molestation, we were ignored. When we rallied for a sex offenders registry, the lawmakers did not budge. When we questioned matters of national interest, we're told, don't concern yourself with it. And when we questioned some of the decisions, alliances, and partnerships forged on behalf of we the people of Grenada, we're laughed at and told, don't bite the hands that feed you. Our investor patterns and CBI programs were supposed to be a way out of poverty or beacon of hope. But with a constant spotlight on wrongdoing and unscrupulous characters associated with these programs, a lot is left to be desired. Grenadians have been given a raw deal. And while many would like to stand up and speak up for change, the environment of fear and vindictiveness is not conducive. So while I brag that my naval Stringberryans and Davids, I realize that a grouping of like-minded people can get our message louder and further. So today I stand up for you. Today I stand with TGM, the Grenada movement. TGM will stand with you. TGM will stand by you. TGM will speak on behalf of the voiceless. TGM will advocate on your behalf. I stand with TGM. So should you.
You're watching the official launch of the Grenada movement, TGM. And now it's time to hear from our chairman. To the majority of us, he is no stranger. But for our viewers around the world, here's a snapshot of our next speaker. He is a leading Caribbean economist and consultant to CARICOM and several international organizations. As well as being an accomplished scholar, he is renowned for his commitment to the development and advancement of Grenada and Grenadians at home and abroad as an outspoken proponent of strategic planning and thinking to resolve issues and build structures, institutions, and solutions. A philanthropist at heart, he believes that in all things, one must give thanks to and be guided by Almighty God. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Patrick Alphonsus Antoine.
Fellow Grenadians at home and in the diaspora, a pleasant evening to you all. On behalf of the committed brothers and sisters of the Grenada movement, colleague members all, it gives me great pleasure to be addressing you on the occasion of the inauguration of this institution. TGM will henceforth repose the dreams and aspirations of generations of Grenadians for a united, independent, productive, innovative, and caring society. Today, as we introduce TGM to you, our fellow Grenadians, we do so at a time of unprecedented uncertainty in our country, others in the region, and indeed globally, in terms of people's livelihoods, the potential for economic collapse, radical changes in the way in which we work, play, live, and yes, even in the way we die, as the deaths from COVID has just exceeded 1 million people worldwide. TGM is a registered NGO. We intend to deal with critical issues attendant to the current development dilemma in Grenada. My countrymen, our parliamentary system of government is rooted in an informed, cultivated, and alert public opinion. Alternative voices via opposition parties, non-governmental organizations, and civil society, therefore, are indispensable to the efficient functioning of democracy. Indeed, I'm sure you will agree, and it will be argued, that the strength of our democracy depends on the strength of our citizenry. TGM believes that the most important responsibility falling to us as Grenadians is the protection and promotion of our democracy. We also believe that democracy means more than the exercise of voting rights every 5 years or so. It also means the recognition of the rights of others, not just of the majority, mind you, but also of those in minority. We must ensure, therefore, that we protect the weak against the strong. Democracy means accountability by the government to the citizens, and the protection of citizens from the arbitrary exercise of power and the violation of their individual rights and freedoms. Democracy means freedom of expression, the freedom to assemble and to engage in lawful activity in organizations such as ours, the TGM. Democracy also means that our increasingly polarized society must find a place for institutions such as TGM, for us to offer an alternative view, and where and as necessary, at times, yes, even to point to a third way. In this period of existential threat to our human civilization, it is simply the wrong time for us to engage in business as usual. COVID-19 has blunted the effectiveness of traditional ways of development and the approaches and results associated with them. It is now more evident than before COVID that we must address long-standing weaknesses in our economic and social systems. For instance, according to a recent IDB study, Grenada ranks as the 11th most tourism-dependent country out of 166 countries examined. Our over-reliance on imports of food and other basic items, and the stubborn level of poverty and inequities placed our society in an extremely vulnerable position. It is evident that we must now address the development of our people and the economy in a balanced, fact-based, and objective manner. Critical evaluation would indicate that the answers to the current situation do not lie simply in increased investment in tourism plant, arguably more of the same, but more so on how we bring about the transformation of the economy and the society as a whole. There can be no denial of the fact that we are well past the time for action. As a Grenadian civilization, therefore, there are urgent decisions for us to make in order to address the food and nutrition security challenges of our people. Those in education, the challenges in health, and the provision of expanded, dignified work and career choices for our youth. We at TGM, through a healthy exchange of views and perspectives over the last several months, have come to a settled view that unless we are able to marshal our collective resources as a Grenadian people, for once playing with our entire team, that we will not be able to seriously address the ever-increasing levels of vulnerability in our society. Moreover, There will be negative consequences for all of us if we fail at this task. But the heaviest burden will be on the poorest and most vulnerable amongst us, now and for entire generations to come. Already too many of our people are living in arrears on the narrow fringes of the breadline, such that any unexpected event, a health challenge of a family member, quite frequent in these stressful times, a fender bender, or even a basic household maintenance problem, is cause for anxiety and panic, as it threatens to plunge the entire family into more unmanageable debt. Notwithstanding, the vast majority of our people continue to serve our homeland well. With the onslaught of COVID-19, we saw and witnessed firsthand the hard-working and unstinting sacrifice that our dedicated servants, the teachers, the police, our farmers, the healthcare workers, the sanitation workers, and others, the sacrifice that they made to continue to maintain the fragile balance of the threads of our economy and society. All of them, out of a sincere sense of patriotism. They all continue to make heavy down payments of social capital to our society. Yet still, they continue to engage in the daily battle to make ends meet. Many fear that their wages and salaries will be cut. Many are anxious too that each paycheck will be the last. All people are fearful about the future. Surely we owe them a debt of gratitude, a living wage, and an opportunity to enjoy a dignified and decent life. We cannot ask our people to continue to toil in the field of sacrifice for much longer without the certain sight of sunset to their difficult circumstances. We must at the very least offer the hope that they will be able to gaze at the sunrise of opportunity. And yes, at the chance of a decent life free from fear and poverty-induced anxiety. We can and must do better by our people. In a country that continues to be pregnant with opportunity, but with which there is always an uncertain delivery date. Indeed, no country can thrive on the perpetual promise of potential without ever actually delivering for its people the very fundamental right of a decent life. Hence the political slogan, some time ago, that we will deliver, is apt, and still relevant. Another political slogan portends to put people first, a construct of tremendous value. Obviously then, the problem is not the coining and celebration of campaign slogans, nor with their stated intent. But we must address the scourge of grinding poverty and raise incomes to overcome the phenomena of the working poor and the growing income inequality in our country. We must focus on generating wealth from internal sources and by Grenadians in the diaspora, not only through the facilitation of foreign direct investment. Yet for all this, there is a place for foreign direct investment as a means of financing and as a means of transferring technology, skills, and know-how. We must empower our people so that they can play their role as citizens in the manner dreamed of by our predecessors, who, in the crucible of struggles over our short history as a civilization, envisioned a society of Grenadians, independent, educated, and strong, but imbued with the same values as they, rooted in the omniscience of our God. We must set aside and ultimately extinguish the growing trend of tribal politics, which at any one time has part of our country engaged and the other part disengaged or uninterested, with the consequence that we have not played at full strength for decades. It is a sobering reality that small as we are, poor as we have made ourselves, we continue to play the game with 6 and 7 men while others that are larger and wealthier than us play with a full team of 11 men. Still, somehow, we have grown the expectation that the world owes us the same standard of living and the same benefits as is enjoyed by others who are playing with their full team. To quote one of my early mentors and a highly celebrated economic historian, George Ignatius Brazan, Grenada is a rich country made poor by bad choices. There is no question that we have and continue to make bad choices and decisions, due in part to the fact that we've never played with a full team. But we've also underperformed because we've quite often not fielded the best team. The problem of choice has been debilitating in instances, for instance, with the decisions taken regarding the oil and gas resources, which seem to have all but disappeared from the public discourse, and which for the foreseeable future appears to have been relegated to a distant second or third by co-development partners. There can be no denying that petrocarbon development has been largely misunderstood by successive governments, and indeed, this explains in large measure the absence from the 2020 to 2035 National Development Plan of any serious treatment of petrocarbon resources and petrocarbon development. The problem of choice, of course, also explains the way in which our agricultural sector manifests systematic declines over the last 2 decades. COVID-19 has simply highlighted the anti-agricultural biases in our domestic policies, and it has also revealed the high societal cost of failing to harness technological innovation in feeding our people and for export growth and development. Indeed, my countrymen, it will soon be evident that we face a further dilemma in agriculture, where by 2030, based on current trends, we will have approximately 1/3 the number of farmers engaged in the sector as we did in 2015. The reality is that successive generations have been educated to exit the land. Retraining young entrepreneurs in agriculture is therefore the quintessential counter-tendency. It will require that we draw on different approaches, including the adoption and adaptation of technology, premised on exports, yes, increasingly on supplying global markets. It is apparent that, in part, we are facing what we may term a failure of imagination regarding actionable solutions to drive the economy on a sustainable path. Other countries, when confronted with similar emergent challenges, and in the wake of COVID-19, are reimagining and refashioning their development model. Our country has no real option but to do the same. We say no real option, for indeed the well-rehearsed option of doing more of the same is always a possibility. This time instead, this time we must seize the opportunity for reimagination and refashioning of the economy and society, and do as my friend Mr. Killer implored us: pick it up and run with it. Running with it means that we must urgently seek to initiate a rebuilding of the economy, making it more resilient in the face of possible pandemic shocks, and to provide better safeguards against poverty and social marginalization. Running with it means that we must identify new sources of government revenue, new areas of innovative activity, and new areas of sustainable economic growth. It also means that we need to do a lot more than attract investment in the same sectors, doing the same things, if we are to get the economy back on track, if we want to make the economy more resilient. The legacy of COVID-19 for our country must be a new economy and a new society. To achieve this new economy and new society, we must all commit to recovery with transformation. TGM is grounded in the understanding that economics and the policy framework that underpins it must first and foremost be about improving the lives of our people. We are convinced that national development at this time of COVID requires the participation of all our people and of the entire country. what we call a whole of society approach, a whole of society response, and not merely a government response. This is why people participation is a core principle for the TGM. In a country as small and fragile as Grenada, and with the monumental challenges to development, we cannot afford to leave anyone behind. Indeed, our country's motto, which aptly captures the high ideals and principles on which our nation state is founded, puts it best when it entrenches in the psyche of patriots. Ever conscious of God, we aspire, build, and advance as one people. TGM believes that the reimagination and transformation of our economy and society is something that we must do together. So even as we move to get the country onto a sustainable development path, we will need to ensure that the social context within which these changes must take place is characterized by social cohesion and by an enduring commitment to social equity and inclusion. We as TGM understand that cohesion and social equity will be pillars of the new society. These are essential if we are to avoid social tensions and build trust and unity among all our people. Reimagining and transformation of our society, not just the economy, will mean that our policies and our institutions must eliminate the systemic factors that act as barriers to progress for some groups based on differences in political parties, social stature, or even religious beliefs. We must rapidly re-engineer our policy frameworks and our institutions to give every Grenadian citizen or resident the certainty that they too stand a good chance, and more so that they stand an equal chance of making a better lives for themselves and their families. Social equity demands that we reimagine the policy framework to entrench technology and training, such that our people, especially our youth from every segment of the society, will be motivated to get into lines of economic activity, particularly those which constitute key elements of the new economy sectors of development. But this is but the first mile. Indeed, the last mile is how we bring about our collective resources to make it happen. For much of this would come to naught if we ignore the scriptural advice of the great apostle James, where in James 1:22, he reminds us, but be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Indeed, sober reflection burdens us all to admit that in some small measure, that we too must carry a small part of the collective responsibility for not making the strides we should have in enabling new economic activity over the past several decades. Indeed, an assessment of savings, investment, and the human resource availability of our people at home and abroad can only yield the sanguineous conclusion that we could have done, but certainly that we must do far more if we are to herald the new economy and the new society. TGM is committed to working together with our people to unlock these opportunities of enabling our people to become doers, not just hearers or talkers. The new economy and the new society, which now forms the development aspirations of so many countries, such as Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana at this time, will not emerge on its own. Only grace has the unique feature to do that. This new economy and new society will take work. It will take doing. It will take sacrifice, and yes, that S word, it will take struggle. But it will also mean taking hold of opportunity and running with it. The doing brings us into sharp focus with the role of key stakeholders, such as governments, the private sector, and civil society. Our country's record for the implementation of public funded projects of less than 50%, for instance, also highlights the importance of the doing. This means that for every dollar of donor-funded public investment projects, less than 50 cents are actually spent. Even as our country laments the poor performance of the economy, the need for increasing employment and economic activity. In addition, Grenada has commitments and undisbursed funds of around 500 million EC dollars. Where these funds are not spent, they cannot be drawn down or must be returned. There is an unenviable record of lost opportunities from this problem of implementation, from the problem of doing. These lost opportunities must be avoided as our country engages the relentless pursuit of the new economy and the new society, as they deny our people the benefit of economic activity, employment, and a decent standard of living. There can be no doubt that these lost opportunities bring into sharp focus the need for a sober and mature discussion around leadership and accountability. But it also opens the discussion about leadership at all levels of government, of the private sector, of civil society, even the church and other key institutions. TGM offers an avenue for the frank and objective discussion of these issues and also for the forming of a consensus on the way forward. To be followed, of course, by a strategy for addressing issues such as the implementation deficit, which has bedeviled virtually all our governments in the post-1983 period. In transitioning to the new society and the new economy, we would fall victim. Go back. In transitioning to the new society and the new economy, we would fall victim to the same errors of omission as others, should we fail to recognize the importance of social capital. TGM believes that an urgent task facing our country is to rebuild and further develop our social capital. While there are rules for all stakeholders in rebuilding social capital, though, this is a task that falls to the entire society. TGM offers a platform to forge a new consensus around these and other key issues. Fellow Grenadians, we have yet another opportunity to join other countries that have been using the COVID pandemic to leapfrog the learning curve into sectors and areas such as green growth, embracing technology-intensive agriculture, actualizing the blue economy, actually benefiting with economic activity and projects from the blue economy, taking hold of opportunities in the maritime sector, advancing opportunities in ICT, including the establishment of the environment for technology-based industries and digitization of our processes, as well as in supporting the development and export potential of our creative and cultural industries. Of course, the creative and cultural industries, even at this time, are benefiting from innovation in ICT. And these innovations and that thrust seem set to continue even after the COVID pandemic. TGM does not profess to have all the answers. Indeed, none of us is expected to. This is why we believe that genuine consultations within a structured institutional framework that encourages a diversity of views and perspectives remains among the best approaches to arriving at solutions best suited to our country's development. Commitment to genuine consultations, though, will sometimes mean that all of us and our authorities will hear things that aren't flattering. But these are precisely the things that we must listen to. For instance, it ought not to have taken us all these years to hear the cries of the youth that the Imani program wasn't working for them and it needed to be reimagined. They spoke loudly, but manifestly to little effect. We simply cannot afford to pursue politics as usual. Even now, as our nation confronts uncertain times, TGM has commenced listening sessions. We want to hear the views and perspectives of our countrymen and women and youth and the elderly, the abled and the differently abled. We intend to exercise the role expected of citizens in a democratic society. Clearly, with only 100,000 of us resident in Grenada, but admittedly, with hundreds of thousands more outside our country, everyone has a role to play. And everyone must be allowed to play their part. We, our civilization, our people, have faced many crises before. Indeed, as a fledgling civilization of transplanted people, mostly of African descent, we have transcended all of these challenges and adversities. We have so much to contribute to the world as a people, as a country, and so much to adapt and adopt from the world and press into the development service of our country. We are not a mendicant people, and we must resist all attempts to take the easy road. We therefore call on all Grenadians, the 100,000 or so of us at home, and the hundreds of thousands of Grenadians abroad. All of us, all Grenadians, we call on you to help our country and our region by assisting in whatever way that you can, and to join this movement. This movement, which is a movement that aims at the reimagination and the transformation of our society and our economy. Join the movement with ideas mostly, with your attention and your commitment to helping us to build this country, all of us. TGM. TGM commits to being the vehicle through which all citizens of the state of Grenada can realize their potential to prosperity, security, to equity, to sustainability, and yes, to democracy in an ever-changing global environment. Should you remember anything of this evening's remarks, remember this: recovery and transformation requires us all. Thank you, and a pleasant good evening to all of you.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes our first segment. We will now invite questions from members of the media and members of our live audience. Okay, thank you everybody so much for tuning in. And I first want to apologize on behalf of the Grenada movement for our technical difficulties in the beginning of our broadcast. Don't worry, we will be posting the full broadcast. It will be available on all our social media platforms, and it will also be rebroadcasted on WPG 10 News. So we will post on our social media the date that it will be rebroadcasted. So we're now inviting questions or comments from persons who are tuned in with us.
Pleasant good afternoon.
Hello.
Yes, good afternoon, and let me congratulate the TGM for the launch, and certainly congratulate Dr. Antoine for his motivating and inspiring message in this launch. I just have one question for him. Many of us can recall your oftentimes balanced contribution to national debates on development in the past. Your absence from the national scene in the last year or so have been conspicuously noticeable. My question to you is why your re-emergence at this time?
All right. Dr. Antoine.
Thank you very much. Thank
We got you unmuted.
Yes, I thought I unmuted before. Let me thank, of course, all of you, and of course to thank you for the question, and to congratulate TGM, and particularly the fantastic work of all our very young and dynamic youngsters who did tremendous yeoman service in putting this together. The last year has been a very difficult time for me. It is no secret that I lost one of the most important people in my life. I lost my father. And it was just necessary for me to, there are times you have to disconnect, rethink, and put things in perspective. I found myself very suddenly as sort of the head of my family, being the oldest of my 3 brothers and my 2 adopted brothers. As you know, they're 6 boys. On top of that, I lost other very important people soon after. And of course, it culminated with my losing a person who has been a dear brother and friend to me, Dr. Trevor Friday. So the last year was a very difficult time. The reemergence, I think, came as a consequence of COVID. And it came too from my searchings. I recognized that it was extremely important for us all as we reconsidered and recontextualized the way in which I think we want to run the 4th leg, making some decisions about where we want that leg to be run. And certainly in my case, I want that leg to be run in Grenada, having spent most of my life out of Grenada. Even when I worked in Grenada, I've made the decision, as I did some time ago, but of course, it was really concretized with my father's demise, with him going home to meet his father, that I wanted to be at home. My mother, of course, is very important to me, and she's still there. But even in my searchings, I would be in Grenada every other week over the last year, though quietly so. Those are really the reasons, and I've learned a lot. I've been able to contribute in a lot of important ways to other development processes. And in all of those things, dynamic, I figured there was an opportunity for me in running this 4th leg to really think about running it at home and investing my energy and time and innovativeness at home. That's, at the end of the day, it is where my navel string is buried.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Antoine. We now have a question from Arthur. Arthur.
No, I think I just asked my question on this. Well, I think he answered and he dealt with his of his absence for the last year. Thank you very much for your time, and may God continue to bless you and bless TGM.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
All right. Up next, I'm asking to unmute Roberta.
Hi,
We're hearing you now.
a pleasant good evening to everyone. It's really a pleasure being here. My question is for Dr. Antoine. So we have heard reference to the new economy before. Is the new economy framework still relevant? And what are some of the essential elements of the new economy framework that any forward-looking government must implement if Grenada is to enjoy social and economic progress?
Excellent question. The new economy discussion that we started some time ago in Grenada, and which has been taken up increasingly by a number of other Caribbean countries, is extremely relevant at this time. In fact, even the commodity exporting countries have now recognized that with the downturn in energy prices and with the downturn in the price of basic agricultural commodity exports, that they need to look at new sectors. And even for those sectors that such as the basic agricultural exports, there are new ways of doing things. So you asked what are the elements? The elements are one, the recognition that we engage in the fourth industrial revolution, and everything that we do really has to be premised on how we bring technology into the utility of our productive systems. And the elements of that in agriculture are just tremendous at this time. Vertical farming, hydroponics, more efficient use of inputs, longer shelf life. All of those are elements that are absolutely critical. In terms of the technology services, that's now been essentially driving a lot of the innovation and change taking place. The fundamental thing is that you have to have the architecture. You have to have the rules, you have to have the laws, you have to have the frameworks, which one encourages investment in those sectors. So the first thing is, how do you create the infrastructure that will essentially give rise to all of these changes? So one of the key elements of this fourth industrial revolution in technology, in innovation, in transformation, is really having the infrastructure. Of course, how you create the infrastructure brings into play government policy. The second thing is that you want to enable access, and you want to enable access to all elements of the society, including people in rural communities, the youth, the elderly. You want to be able to give them access to technological developments, and a lot of this, of course, is founded on the kind of technological backbone that you create with information and communications technology. A lot of those are going to be very important, whether it's in financial transactions with financial services. We call it fintech services, financial technology applied to that, which means that people's time becomes a lot more valuable, particularly now. You don't have to go to the bank, for instance, to carry out financial transactions. And of course, the East Caribbean Central Bank is starting to pilot this issue of digital money. In terms of other technological applications, we have things now such as artificial intelligence, and there are basic elements of this that a number of developing countries are enabling. It's not rocket science, because it starts with a number of innovations such as 3D stamping in the manufacturing sector. In terms of the new economy sectors, a lot of it is going to be technology driven. How do you, for instance, use your information and telecommunications backbone to ensure that when you export goods and services, there's traceability? How do you, for instance, bring new innovation in cultural industries to the attention and to the service of the global market? Again, all of those things require information and communications technology. So really, a lot of it is premised around the fourth industrial revolution, and it's also premised around, for instance, how do you make people's lives fundamentally better? Telemedicine. How do you make the services in health? How do you make the services in social systems, social security? How do you make the services in education a lot more efficient? How do we, for instance, ensure that we have the best mathematics instructions taking place in every nook and cranny in our country, using information and telecommunications technology, because a fundamental pillar of this is going to be how do we bring our people up to the standard of the rest of the world in terms of education, technical and vocational instruction and learning. All of these are going to be key things that are elements of the new economy and the new society. And of course, the macroeconomics around this means that we must get the policy framework in place to enable this. We must get the investment regimes, the incentive regimes to enable this. All of it is based on everything that we do must basically ask the question, how can we press technology to the service of the activities that we've brought on?
All right. So I just want to remind anybody who is joining us through Zoom that if you would like to ask a question, this also goes to members of the media, you just raise your hand. Right now, we're moving on to Kushana Archer. You can ask your question. Just go ahead and unmute. There we go.
Hi, everyone.
All right.
My question is, what are the dimensions of development that TGI's agenda is designed to cover, and how will it be different from other NGOs? Do you need to say that again?
Yes, I think we lost you a little bit.
Okay, no problem. What are the dimensions of development that TGM's agenda is designed to cover, and how will it be different from other NGOs?
Thank you very much. Well, let me talk first of all about what we as TGM intend to bring to bear on this society, and to have the society bring to bear on us, because TGM, after all, is a people-centered organization. And I think for us, our agenda really is based on how do we create the change factors that will take us into this new economy and new society, because the old economy, in several respects, the old economy has shown signs of wear and tear, and is not going to generate the levels of economic growth that will sustain and reduce, in our case in Grenada, unemployment, generate economic activity, etc. So the question is, what do we intend to do? Well, we intend as TGM to first of all frame a very serious development agenda. The development agenda that we've begun to frame, which is wide open for lots of others to input in, because we don't have all the answers, is how do we, for instance, engage in a new agriculture? Not just the same old thing, but how do we, for instance, bring to bear the technological developments we've been talking about with the policy frameworks around it, including how we train people to engage in value added, in nutraceuticals, in pharmaceuticals. How do we train them to use what we have in creating a range of new products and services? Yes? So we want to engage in that kind of discussion. In education, we believe that we've been too slow to do what is required in technical and vocational education. We know that we've spoken about it. We need to bring the segment of our population that is not academically inclined, but who have tremendous potential in technical and vocational skills. We need to bring them up to world standards by certifying them so that they can engage in economic activity on their own, but they can also take up the jobs that the new economy increasingly are churning out, but for which a lot of our people are not ready to fit into. In the case of information and telecommunications technology, we believe that we need to bring the infrastructure, the backbone, to every nook and cranny in our country. We believe that we've been too slow in actually building out the last mile, so that every household, every community, whether you're in the most rural part of our country or in urban centers, benefit from the same access. And how do we, one, create access on reasonable terms for people who can afford it? And how do we create free access for people who can't afford it as a public good? So for us, that's an important part of what we intend to do. In the area of foreign policy, we believe that our foreign policy must be matched with our overall development strategy and where we want to go as a country based on our development goals. Our foreign policy must support that. We believe that Grenada has a lot to offer in terms of technical cooperation, not just as a receiving state, but as a sending state. And we believe that any modern society that's gone through the struggles we've gone through certainly has an opportunity to give to the world as well as to benefit from the world. So our whole approach in terms of what's different is framing a very serious development agenda that is one, practical, that is two, driven by developments that's taking place throughout the world, that is three, it builds off the foundations that we've come from, four, that really helps us to situate our country. Things like, people's participation of all the segments of the society, which we think is important. We think right now, it's sad that we have some segments that are not participating. By bringing everyone on board, including Grenadians abroad, we believe that we can forge that development agenda, not just a plan, but a development agenda that is going to be very different to what we see on the ground right now. That is really what we want to do as a TGM to improve people's lives.
All right, coming up next, we have a question from Callistra. Callistra, you're on the spotlight. Just go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Okay, I my audio works. My internet is stable at the moment. Good evening, TJ and Dr. Fine. Tell me what the
Callistra, we can hardly hear you. If you can take your video off, it may be better for us to hear your audio.
Okay, let me try that. I can hear it better now.
Slightly.
Better now.
Slightly better.
So let someone else ask a question, and when I can stabilize it a little bit more.
Okay, so Callistra,
okay,
we're not hearing you, but you can leave the message in the chat, and I'll read it out for everyone to hear. So you can type it out in our chat, and we will now move on. In the meantime, to Linda Stricker, I believe, has questions. Linda, you're unmuted. You're up.
Good night to you and everyone. I have a number of questions. Can Dr. Patrick Antoine, he was introduced as the chairman of this NGO. Can you tell us who are the other members of that NGO, the executive members in particular? What is the mission and objective of the TGM? What are the areas of focus, because it's registered as an NGO? And whether or not he has retired today. That's it for now. I have others that I will ask as follow.
Thank you, Linda. That's about 6 questions. Let me take the last one. I'm not sure what you mean by retired. I don't ever plan to retire. Let me take the questions by order of the final one. I think you may need to mute so I can speak. So
we're hearing you.
Yes, the last one. I don't ever intend to retire. By the grace of God, I hope He gives me the strength so that I can continue. And when I can't continue in one vocation, that He gives me the strength to continue in another. So that's the question I want to speak to. And the next one, in terms of the executive, there is in fact a founders group that's made up of a number of persons. We can provide you with all the names of the executive. It's really an NGO, so it's very public. And the documents are filed as an NGO as well. We have members. Jennifer, we have Jennifer Rapier, we have a number of persons who are members of the executive. We have Kenneth, Ned, we have many other persons. That's public information, and we will send the entire list to you. The other question about registered as an NGO, that's correct.
Right.
I can only speak if I can not have the... Emily, I think you need to mute so I can... You need to mute others.
Okay.
Hello? Yes. The other issues regarding whether we are an NGO, we are a registered NGO. We are a civil society organization that intends to focus on a lot of public policy issues. So yes, we are an NGO. That is what it is. And we intend to continue being an NGO by dealing with issues of importance and relevance to the Grenadian society and to the Grenadian people. I think those would answer at a top level the questions that were asked. I see a question in the chat from someone called Tessa. And let me answer the question from Tessa because I think it's important. TGM intends, the question is about the development of the rural community. TGM's approach to development in the way that we've discussed it so far, in the meetings and in the consultations and in the focus groups that we've had, is that our approach to development is that we must develop the infrastructure, the services and the opportunities in the rural community that makes the rural community no different from the urban community as a place to live and work and live. Live and work and play. And play, very important play. So recreational facilities, economic opportunities, schools, health services. We intend that the rural community manifests absolutely no difference to, for instance, the communities in the urban area. So in short, we intend for communities in Munich and in Plaisance and in Tivoli to have the same characteristic features as, for instance, a community in Grenada or a community in Lansapine, right? We want the same services to exist throughout, whether it's internet quality, electrification, water, roads, all of it. That is our approach to rural development and to development as a whole. Because we believe if we don't do that, we're going to have a situation where we have nodes of development and resources are concentrated there. But we have areas and regions that will increasingly become more disadvantaged.
All right. We have one more question in the chat from Jonathan Paul. Are there currently any initiatives in place to engage the current government about the new economy? How does TGM plan to get their message across to the government in such a way that they may possibly see results coming out of it?
Well, I can only say that the government of Grenada has itself embraced the new economy in a number of initiatives, certainly in the way that they would have positioned the way that they saw development in certain sectors, and over the years we have seen some signs which would have suggested that the very clear radical direction that was required would have been taken. But in other areas, we have not seen the progress anticipated. So we believe that the concept of the new economy is not going to be a concept that there's going to be any war over or any conflict over. We think that there's going to be tremendous consensus around it. We believe that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And while we may all agree on what the elements of the development strategy or plan is going forward, the way in which we intend to get to it is where I believe the difference is going to be. And I trust that the administration and certainly the opposition, not just the government, and other groups within the society are also able to rally around and to form a consensus on what are the elements that we ought to promote and how we ought to do it, because there are going to be sacrifices. And we're going to have to agree together on what are the sacrifices we want to make if we want to see this transition. And so how we intend to do it is through engagement. We intend to engage. We intend to engage in a manner that is going to offer our support. We intend to engage in a manner that is non-confrontational. We believe that it is only through dialogue and engagement that we can make progress on these important pillars. And that is what we intend to do. We do not anticipate any situation where there is going to be conflict, though there may be differences in the approaches and how we get there, differences in the speed, differences in the sequence in what comes first. That is really where we believe that there are going to be some differences. What we've done is that we want to continue building out the new economy, because although it's been mentioned in 2013, we believe that not a lot of emphasis would have been placed on it in a number of areas that are critical, that we think we can support the country in moving to.
All right, we'll be taking 2 more questions. The next one is from John Crow. John, you can unmute and ask your question.
John is muted. John is muted.
Are you still with us? Okay, so we'll move on.
No,
John,
you want to try and unmute
you have to
him.
unmute. I invited you to unmute. Just accept the invite.
I'm doing okay.
John, you're muted again.
And I did it again.
All right. Ready to go
Okay.
now.
All right. Dr. Antoine, good evening, and good evening to everybody. Mental illness. I did not hear you mention anything on mental illness. I didn't hear anything mentioned about our seniors. The physically challenged, we have several people who are physically challenged in our country, and the whole notion of age discrimination. I heard you say that you don't have any plans to retire. I'm in your camp on that one, because we have a lot of retirees who have a lot to give, and we have them sitting in, like say, put them out to pasture, and nothing from them. Now, I want to ask this question: is this TGM a political party in disguise of a community organization or of an NGO? So I'll go back and listen to mental illness, seniors, the physically challenged, age discrimination.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crow. We have a working group on health and health services. And in that working group, I know that they've discussed the matter of mental illness. I know that they've discussed this along with many other issues. And I know that there is a feeling, and there is also a consensus building in that group, that we don't put enough resources in dealing with mental health, and that is certainly an area that needs to be focused on going forward. We believe that we have a number of persons who need medical attention for various mental illnesses for which our society has not yet put its arms around in terms of providing the medical attention for those persons. I know that's a consensus in that group. The elderly. We believe that the elderly have an extremely important role to play. One of the things that we have spoken about is how do we use the elderly as a resource to help, as it were, provide some apprenticeship, among other things, for young professionals coming out with academic or vocational or technical training in terms of values and ethics and professional, just in the way in which they act professionally and responsibly in a society where they're called upon to play certain important roles. And we believe that that is something that we have lost, this connectivity with, that we need to get back. A lot of societies which are fast growing recognize the value of the elderly as persons who sit on boards in community organizations, etc., and impart wisdom. That is a big part of what we call social capital, and we believe we've lost a lot of that. When we talk about getting back social capital, we talk about how do we build these institutions so that these persons can play their rightful role in society. And they can take their role at the head of the table, how they can take their role in the corner offices, how they can take their role in the workshops, how they can take their role in the farms, so that they can pass on traditional knowledge, learning, and also what they would have learned over the years. We believe that we need to get that back. TGM as a political organization. No, we have been very clear. We are an NGO. We are here to participate with the rest of NGOs in doing a number of things that we think need to be done now in our society. We believe, for instance, that the most important task that falls to us is helping to build an agenda that is a consensus agenda that we can then, with other groups, whether they are political parties, civil society organizations, persons who have a lot of expertise to offer, but don't want to or don't see a facility to contribute this. We want to build that agenda out, and we want to be able to have an agenda that we believe is forward-looking, rather than really discusses 5 and 10 and 15 years in the past. We want to focus on an agenda which will help to take the country where it needs to go rapidly by leapfrogging. The development process in a number of areas. That is really where we want to go as an NGO which deals with these social aspects and with critical issues in our society at this time.
All right. We are running out of time, but we will take one more question to cover health. One question from Alice, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. A driving factor for productivity is a healthy human resource base. Noting this, what are the plans for health?
Okay, so as I indicated before, we have a health group. We have a health group which has retired nurses, active doctors, retired doctors, doctors who work outside of Grenada. And the health group, they're focusing on, I know that for them, the most important thing would be primary health care. How do we deal with both primary health care and preventative health care by doing the right thing? We recognize, for instance, that the Caribbean is the region in the hemisphere which has the highest level of non-communicable diseases, hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, etc. We believe that a lot of that really stems from or not paying sufficient attention to the causal factors for these things at an early enough stage in the life cycle of a human being. So we believe that one of the things that we must discuss when we discuss health is how we discuss lifestyles, diet, nutrition, exercise, and healthy living. We believe that we need to take an approach that is really an approach throughout the life of the individual. It's a life cycle approach. And we believe that if we are able to do it, will cut the level of NCDs, hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, etc., will cut that significantly. That's a big drag on our society. It's a big drag on our healthcare budget. The second thing is preventative medicine. Not preventative medicine, primary healthcare. Where do we deal with certain types of illnesses without having to go to the hospital, for instance, right? That's a matter of structuring. Can we create a polyclinic type structure throughout the country where certain types of services are provided, which takes the burden off our hospital system? So there are a tremendous amount of things that the health group is dealing with. Of course, this one is institutional, and then this you have resource. Resource will have to do with how do we, for instance, deal with the issue of national health care. Our view is that national health care has to be properly thought out. We trust it is still a goal that we can achieve, but we think that we have to think a little wider. In looking at national health care, if we are to give people the quality of health care that they will expect, and we believe that that takes us into a discussion of Grenada as a center for excellence in a number of areas, and it also puts us squarely into the domain of discussing how do we leverage the St. George's University and its programs, as well as Grenadians in the diaspora and others in the diaspora who are either alumni or others related to the university, and also how we use technology as a platform to drive all of this. So we are having a tremendously important discussions in that group, which I stray into every once in a while. But I'm happy to say that this is the kind of issue that TGM wants to deal with and to come up with practical solutions that we can contribute to the development process. I see the last one on health tourism. Health tourism is an important aspect of what we're going to be dealing with. Many colleagues believe there are two approaches. One is where we have people come to Grenada to actually do procedures, and that comes off of what I said, Mr. Crow, on Grenada as a center of excellence. So that you can come to Grenada, you can convalesce in Grenada within the context of a healthy society, healthy diets, healthy nutrition, but extremely good first world medical attention, but without having to pay first world rates. We believe that's important too. So yes, we're seeing all of this as part of the discussion on health, and in the context of health tourism, we want to see how we link that with the tourism product. We believe if we can do that, then we can start thinking about how we displace a number of persons who look to Grenada, for instance, as a destination that they can purchase, for instance, residency from, into a destination where they can reside comfortably for periods in the year because they are close to good medical attention. And of course, they are free to travel to other parts of the world from here. It's a different kind of program without getting into much on the discussion now that's been conceptualized. So it's not just about citizenship by investment. It's about residency because we have a good healthcare program. We have the safest society in the region. We have good institutions around us. We have good justice, law and order, and we have good connectivity. I believe that's the kind of a new society that we need to start creating, which gives jobs to a number of young people, professionals in other areas, for instance, in adult care, in geriatric care, with good hospital facilities. We believe the sky is the limit if we can bring these things together.
Yes, and the sky is the limit. Thank you so very much, Dr. Antoine. And thank you to everybody who asked your questions. Those of you whose questions were not able to be answered at this time, I do apologize, but we have run out of time. Now, if you would like to continue the discussion or join the movement, you can do so at www.thegrenadamovement.org. That's www.thegrenadamovement.org. Thank you guys so much again for joining us.
Have a good night. Thank you, everybody.
On Facebook, We'd like to thank everyone for watching and everyone who participated in putting this event together. Thank you. You can follow us on social media, the Grenada Movement, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Sign up to receive our podcasts and other interesting content via our website, www.thegrenadamovement.com. We are so happy that you joined us. Thank you and good night.